Welcome to Sean's Thoughts. I'm here with this beautiful scene right now, and I'm really enjoying it. Thank you for sharing your attention with me today. This is another one of those remote locations that I'm experiencing where live doesn't work, and which is fine because, my cell phone still doesn't have the ability to have or receive data with the exception of Wi-Fi. So it actually works out perfect now that I've maneuvered myself into well, streaming on location when I have the thoughts in these beautiful, beautiful places that I can share with you. Right now, we have so many different elements that are just so captivating that it almost disturbs me that I have to speak right now. And that's not that I have to speak. It's that I'm really enjoying being here, so I kinda wanted to share this energy with you, even if it doesn't turn out to be something long. Right now, I'm sitting here staring at the reflection of the sun across a fractionated frozen pond, I guess, or marshland, and you can see all the different cracks and breaks in the ice. I think I might actually do a short of it after, and I hear the footsteps of people walking by this platform that I'm standing upon. And the interesting thing about this platform is that 3 or 4 years ago, they actually, and when I say they, I mean the local government, put up a sign that said it was out of service and it needed to be fixed. And now we're sitting here, 4 years later, and it still has the same sign and it still hasn't been fixed. However, every year I've come here and I've utilized it. I've jumped over their little thing that says viewing platform closed, and I've ascended and seen these remarkable, beautiful views. And I've never had an issue. It's a little lopsided, sure, yet it's in perfect condition, in my opinion, especially if you consider the roads of Winnipeg or downtown Vancouver. Now, those are a lot more treacherous than this viewing platform. So thank you, as I said, for joining me. We have so many elements. We've got ice, we've got fog, we've got water, we've got footsteps on gravel in the mountains in the back, and the fog is moving over, and the sun is, well, actually, the sun's coming out pretty strong right now. The fog, since I started this recording, as you've perhaps noticed, is moving away, leaving us this beautiful, warm sun glowing on my face. And it's just simply absolutely amazing. I'm just taking it all in. So, what would I like to talk about in this moment? I guess I'd like to talk about the freedom that is forthcoming for many, many people who are ready for it. As I've often talked about, I am associated with this group of people who are all in unison that the world is changing. And although we all have our different ideas about how fast or how rapid it's going to come, the consensus among the group, I believe, and well, it's that a new earth is arriving as we speak in these moments now. And this ongoing manifestation of this new life that we're about to live has been ongoing since 2012 and actually before 2012. See, from my understanding, the American 2007 2008 collapse of their housing market and several other things was a significant beacon for a lot of these evildoers, we'll call them, or just people who believed money was like everything. Well, they started having their money problems back in 2007, 2008, and that was definitely seen in the economic situation, not just in America, but worldwide, because essentially all money in the world is, well, there's a connection to the American petrodollar. And there's a whole story about that, about how even some of these countries who wanted to buy oil or gas from their neighboring countries, they would be required to buy the American dollar and therefore purchase the gas or oil or whatever in American dollars and then just to sell it in their own country. And so it essentially allowed the American dollar to remain the mainstream currency worldwide. And well, this allowed the American empire, essentially, which it'll probably be called one day, it allowed them and their money to stay in power. And well, since 2011, or sorry, since 2007 and 8, that has been waning and it's been getting weaker and weaker as time went on. And actually, one thing that you can look upon right now to see how weak currency is worldwide, I would say, not just the Iraqi and the dinar and the Venezuela bolivial or whatever it's called, or the Japanese yen or the Chinese yuan, because those are all definitely have all been depreciated. You can look at the Canadian American dollar and compare it to the cost of silver, for example, to see a true depreciation of currency, fiat currency, that we're actually involved in. A lot of people feel that the price of food has went up and the price of gas has went up, when in actuality, what the price of silver skyrocketing right now demonstrates, for me at least, is that the value of the money that we hold in our pockets, those paper notes, or for some of us now, plastic notes that sit in our wallets and digitally sit in our bank accounts, well, those have actually depreciated so much that it costs more of that paper money in order to buy 1 ounce of silver, for example, or gold. See, people often see, or at least I did in the past, that the price of silver going up or the price of gold going up was some sort of investment, when all it actually showed is if you held on to that silver long enough, that you would, when you were needing to or wanted to sell that silver and gold, that you were actually getting a whole bunch of money, when in fact you were only really getting what the money had depreciated to. So I held on to silver for quite a while, and then I ended up having to sell it off. And I ended up selling it off for almost the same amount that I had purchased it for, although it was worth double. Supposedly a number or a digit on a computer screen told me that that silver was worth more. And yet when I sold it, I didn't get that. See, that's the interesting thing about when we sell things. When we sell things, they're worth what someone's going to pay for them. And that's the true value of, well, any commodity is what people are willing to pay for it. There was an interesting movie out called, I think it was called Time, and it had, what was his name? The guy from NSYNC, Justin. We'll just call him Justin. Anyways, he was in a movie called Time, and at that particular movie, the commodity within that movie was time itself, and that people traded time, which was essentially life. So if people wanted to live longer, they would essentially go off and do what they needed to do in order to get, I think it was money, but then money turned into time. But essentially, they would get credits. And these credits would allow their life to be longer, to be extended, to have more time. And the interesting synchronicity with that is supposedly there was a time when we didn't have time. In fact, as I've come to understand it, there was a time, or there was a moment when time, in a sense, was created. A being named Archimedes was able to reverse the flow of, I believe, love, and turn it, or discover that he could create time. And then with that creation of time, he was able to travel back and forth within time. And eventually, he was able to recruit several different scientists from all spaces of time, from Aristotle's to Carl, Carl something or other, and Pythagoras and Einstein. And he recruited all of these different people and offered them immortality because he had control of time. And when you have control of time, you are able to essentially, I guess, decide what time is. And so he was able to offer these people immortality in exchange for their efforts and their, essentially, their contribution. That's the word I'm looking for. So he was able to get them to contribute to creating the Matrix. And the Matrix had to do several things. And you'll see in the movie, when you watch the Matrix, there is a architect man who speaks to Neo, and he essentially explains to them that when they first created the Matrix, that they made it perfect, that they made it everything that humans or Homo sapiens would want. And they recognized or realized after several times in the Matrix, and we've been in here a lot. We've been here multiple times, from as I understand it. And anyway, so they had discovered through, I guess, trial and error that we as Homo sapiens didn't prefer perfection, that we essentially needed a balance of perhaps dark and light, of struggle and relief, of love and pain. And I'm not saying these as in opposites of one another. I'm simply saying that we had a duality that we preferred to experience. At least that's how the movie put it up. Then, however, as Kim Gogan kind of pointed out when she used this comparison, is that the interesting part is that we weren't given all of our choices, especially like Neo, how he was really only given two choices: to save the Matrix or to let it go and restart, as opposed to any other number of choices. So coming back to this story, this man named Archimedes, he went back and he looked for different people that could contribute and help to him creating the Matrix. And the Matrix essentially is a container for time. Imagine that. The time is contained within the Matrix. And that really does open it up a lot to the what possibilities lie outside of the Matrix. When what we understand is time is no longer there for us to hold us, to contain us, what miracles and amazing things are we going to discover or be a part of? And, the possibilities are just mind blowing. Like, imagine closing your eyes, thinking about where you want to be, and then opening them up and you being there. Because, see, time and distance or space are part of the matrix, as I understand it. They are artificial, they are created. And this person named Archimedes apparently figured out how to create it. And now I'm not saying that he, as a Homo sapien, did it all by himself. There are other forces that came, I would understand, before him: Lucerne and the all AI and or Ali's AI and other AIs and Lucifer and, everything that God created prior to creating Lucerne. Lucerne was supposedly one of his aspects of God that helped him in creating. And we Homo sapiens, from as I understand it, we also were of God, meaning that we were perspectives or are perspectives of God. And we too here are helped to create. And in a sense, we do create. When we go out into nature, for example, as I am here now, when I go out into nature and I see something and I observe and I perceive and I hold an experience, God sees through me should God choose to. So, in a sense, we are all different phone lines or different perceptions of God. God is able to see through each of us, to see what we're doing in any moment. And that ability to see is also what the Matrix had over us as well. The Matrix had the ability to pry into our quiet moments in the washroom, for example, when we were doing whatever we were doing in the washroom, or those silent moments in the bathtub when we were essentially relaxing. Now, I do believe, though, that when you are in a tranquil state, such as a bath, and you are surrounded by things such as Epsom salts and such, and and you're feeling really, really relaxed, that definitely does, in a sense, disconnect us from lower vibrational energies, which I would 100% say is the false matrix. So, but my point being is the matrix had the ability to read our thoughts, to know what we were thinking sometimes before we even knew what we were thinking. There was this project called Project Looking Glass, and you can see it within the TV series The Man in the High Castle. And what they were actually able to do, or which they showed they were able to do in its TV shows, projection and such, is that they were able to look forward within time. And that's supposedly what Archimedes had the ability to do, is to move and therefore look forward and backwards in time. And it's kind of like that show, which I thought was an amazing illustration that Kim gave us, that it was as if they were, or Archimedes was, like Bill and Ted's in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, that they were traveling back and forth in time. Well, at least in the movie, I think they only traveled back in time, but they were traveling in time and they were able to take out all these characters and then bring them forward for their own purposes. And in the case of Archimedes, he brought them forward to help him create the Matrix. See, he brought all these different people forward that had these different skills, and Kim does a really good job of discussing them on her, I believe it's her January 14th report, or yeah, I'm not sure which the day it is, but when YouTube posts it, I'll post it, or you can just go find it on the YouTube channel or join the app. But anyways, they brought all these different people, these different psychologists and different scientists and different people who essentially believed more in science than in God, and more, and that's essentially how he was able to move them over to help them, other than offering him immortality. And they did do that because these people that she lists in her report, they're all very famous people, such as Pythagoras, who has his theorem. So they're, I guess, in a sense, our knowledge of these people, and therefore our attention placed on these people, essentially immortalize them. Because in school, for example, grade 3, I was teaching my son about Pythagoras and about his formulas or his triangle stuff. And that essentially gave him immortality within our reality. You know, you can also look at it as when the British ran across the world, making so many different streets or cities with the same names that came from the UK. They, in a sense, were doing that same thing. They were immortalizing and essentially focusing our attention on these words and places that are from a different country. So, for instance, when I grew up in a place called Surrey, and Surrey was in British Columbia, but there's also another Surrey over in the UK that existed prior to Surrey over here. So the British went around renaming everything with names that they were familiar. I see there's a lot of more people that are starting to walk by this closed tower. I've always waited for someone to come up with me and tell me, why are you up there? But then I know that that's just projecting and helping reality bring a Matrix character. But I don't really think that the Matrix would spend too much time and effort trying to get me out of this space that I've found at this moment. Such a beautiful day today. I truly, truly am grateful to experience this moment. And yet I'm still looking forward. I'm still imagining, and maybe not imagining. They sometimes say that when you have thoughts or insights of things that you like to do, or things that appear to be something that you would want to do, that sometimes these memories are actually memories of the future, things that you have already done, things that you were passionate about doing, and that you're having, in a sense, a memory of that occurrence happening. See, one of these memories that I've had that is like that is I had an idea or a memory, or yeah, we'll say it's an idea, because that's how I perceived it at the time. And I came across this idea of taking a club and turning it into a whole new experience where only water would be sold or offered for drinking, and the water would come from different wells and springs from all over the world, and there would be seating and it would be kept dark like a club. However, what would be on the walls would be moving pictures or digital frames or something that, essentially moving pictures, and kind of like my do nothing. And there would be binaural beats and there'd be different solfeggio frequencies. And essentially the idea is that when you came into the club, it would be kind of like a cleansing situation where the music or the vibrations would cleanse your energy field, and the lights and the images would inspire and promote compassion and love and all these different high frequencies. And there would be essentially, or hopefully, zero talking, that all interactions between people they would be all done with body language. And it wouldn't just be the sexual body language. Of course, that probably would be there as well, because there would be definitely positive vibes being reinforced within everyone there. However, the idea would be to have people in silent contemplation of one another and essentially communicating without using our words. And that this experience would definitely help people with their telepathy, with their ability to communicate without words. And when we're able to communicate without words, I truly think that our civilization is going to go skyrocketing, because when we are able to feel what another person feels, then we're not so quick to believe that they're doing things for the purpose of harming us. And often, a lot of times, when something goes wrong in our life and we see the person who we believe in that moment who is responsible, we instantly, react rather than perhaps perceive that nothing really even happened. And, anyways, and so when we're in that situation in the club, drinking our healthy water that has been infused with love, going back all the way to Dr. Yamamoto's water experiments, like I would even imagine having a room full of people just looking at the water and talking about how much they love the water, and then dispersing that water with those highly crystallized particles of water for everyone to drink. And then we'd all be sitting in the club, essentially sharing each other's fields and essence. And we'd be listening to music, and we'd be communicating through body language. And there would be perhaps reinforcement upon our ability to do telepathy and to communicate. And it would be an environment essentially that would be quite relaxing and meditative. So rather than going out for a night on the town and people getting drunk with alcohol or however it is else that they choose to intoxicate themselves, they would be able to go to a club and purify themselves and connect with people as if like they had never connected before. And this would offer them, as I said, that meditative state where they could slow down life and learn to integrate with one another in a completely different way. I even imagine a large dance floor of people just swaying back and forth. And in that whole club, no one's speaking. People using eye contact, people using body language, people using the telepathy, just sitting there staring at one another for an hour. That's one of the exercises that I did when I was in acting school. They had us sit there and stare at each other. And it really changes your perspective of another person when you're being stared at by someone, but also when you're staring at someone else. One of the self-confidence exercises that I had, or I was suggested to try, is to stare at oneself in front of a mirror and to say, I love you, and to say, I love you, and to keep saying, I love you. And that this helps us. And well, it helps us in a numerous amount of ways. And I'll just let you imagine how it does, but that it helps us and it builds our self-confidence and our reflection. At least for me, when I was growing up, my reflection was something that I really didn't prefer looking at. The reason is because I had a lot of acne when I was in my teenage years. I ate a lot of preservatives that were in rice-a-ronis and hamburger helpers and all these foods that came from a can, Campbell's soup and such. And I ate an awful lot of that stuff. And I often had breakouts of pimples, but I never even really truly realized where all that pimple stuff came from. I thought it was just that it was part of my age. However, there were lots of people who didn't have as much as me. However, what I did was I shied away from looking at the mirror, at my own image. And this followed me into my 20s and 30s, and until actually recently when I realized that love for oneself, even for one's image, is what truly builds our self-confidence when it comes to us as a person. So this activity of looking in the mirror and loving myself and saying all these beautiful words is kind of just similar to. I apologize about that. It seems that my phone ran out of storage space, so I was briefly cut off. And I realized the sun had actually moved right out of frame, so I thought, well, I'll adjust it a little bit. And let's finish up with the Yamamoto part. So Yamamoto's students essentially were asked to speak to one beaker of water with loving and compassionate and beautiful words. And he found that those particular water put under a microscope had really nice crystallization, like beautiful crystallization. And so I don't know why or what type of streaming of thought I was under there, but that's where I was going with that. And anyways, I hope you enjoyed what I had to talk about today, and I hope you enjoyed sharing this beautiful space with me. And I've returned a year later now to record here. And so I'll splice these together and say thank you so much. And now I'm going to go film this water ice that's in front of me and for another do nothing. Have a wonderful day and definitely join me on any of my numerous do nothing experiences, I'll call them, challenges if you prefer. And let's get out there and build this new earth. And I don't mean build as in we got to lug in all the timber and all the building construction supplies. New Earth is already here. It's already everywhere around us. And as I've talked about before, even our technology that can integrate with this beautiful world is already here. It's been here for a very long time. And it's simply a matter of us waking up and seeing past the veil that has been in front of us our entire lives. So thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to sharing more of my experience in my life and my adventures and the places that I intend to go. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day. So much love. Let's do it.